Hello, and welcome to part 2 of Stain 2319's VZFit SDK tutorial video. If you watched the last video, you should have been able to build a test scene or test app, the editor. So if you've gotten that far, then next step is going to be to learn how you can make it your own. So when we last left off, we had our test scene from the VZFit SDK up and running here. And what I want to do is just quickly replace the bicycle avatar with something a little different. So we can highlight this guy and then go over into the editor window and press F on your keyboard, which will focus on the current object that you have highlighted. It gives us just a little bit of a close-up view. And we want to go ahead and once we have this guy in front of us, just hit the delete button and he's gone from the scene. So now we have to decide what we want to put in instead. I was thinking that maybe a car would be a good idea. So I went into the asset store and I searched for car. Then scroll down here and click on free assets so that you only see things which aren't going to cost you any money. Feel free to spend money if you want to. I prefer not to. Here's the car that I chose. Thought that looked like a pretty nice vehicle. So you're going to want to go ahead and click download. I already clicked that. And then import, which will import the project or the asset into your project rather. And now we can look up here and we have a car model 1 folder with some subfolders inside. So we'll go back over to our scene view here. Whenever you download assets like this from the store, you usually want to look for a folder that says prefabs. Here they've spelled it wrong. It says perfabs, but it should say prefabs. Inside there, you'll usually find one or more prefab assets, which is just basically a pre-made object that you can easily drop in and manipulate. So we're just going to go ahead and drag that car into our view. And then we can move it with these arrows a little bit to kind of make it sit on the ground instead of being buried halfway in the ground. And there we go. So then there are a few components that we need to add to this car to make it playable. So the first thing we do is once again highlight the car, go over here to add component, click on add component and look for VZ Player. VZ Player is the script that turns this into an actual playable vehicle. You can see we've got some settings here. We can tweak those if we need to. The first thing I'm going to tweak is the neck height. You just want to set this usually between about 0.6 and 1, but it depends on how things look in your game. So I'm going to start with 0.6 and just see how that goes. And once you've done that, you'll notice that here is a selection for body prefab. Currently it says none. I'm going to click this little circle here, which will take us over to this window, and you want to click on the Assets tab because we want to look for something that's in our assets but not yet in the scene. And in this case, it's showing us all our prefab assets, and the one we want is called VZ Controller. I'm going to take this, drag it over here, or you can just select it and here. You can also drag and drop from down here under VZ, prefabs, and then core. You can take the VZ controller from here and actually just drag and drop it onto that field. And the other two things we need to add, one is called a rigid body. A rigid body is just a special component that tells Unity that physics can be applied to this item. It has a mass, drag, etc. We won't worry about those settings right now. We just need this to be present so that our vehicle can move around in the world. And then finally, the third thing we need to do is add a collider. The collider is something that Unity uses to determine whether you have hit something or are touching something. In this case, we're going to add a box collider because our object is fairly rectangular in nature. You see that places a box here in the car. It's not quite the right size. So I'm going to click Edit Collider. and just kind of stretch this out. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it to just kind of encompass your vehicle. And that's it. We have those three things added to our vehicle, and we can now click the play button. Go ahead and set this to maximize. We get the familiar splash screen, hit enter, and we can see we're now in a car, or on top of a car, as it were. Hit the space bar, and you can see that you can drive around and steer just as before. You can even fly right off the cliff, because it's a very small plane we've been given here. Which brings us to our next step, replacing this plane with something cool. So we're going to once again click on that plane, click delete from our scene, and then go up here to the game object menu, 3D object, and terrain. Terrain in Unity is just a big area. See, if we zoom out here, it's fairly large. We can move around inside our scene. Now, the cool thing about a Unity terrain is that once you click on it, you'll see that you have these tools over here. You can choose different ways to modify your terrain. What we're going to do is actually paint terrain, paintbrush here, and then raise or lower terrain. And now you see we have some various brushes to choose from. Choose a fairly solid brush, and I'm going to make it big, say 500s. And what happens is when you click this brush on your terrain, it'll actually deform, modify terrain to your specifications. You can hold Shift while clicking to lower the terrain again, change to different brushes and different sizes to produce detail. And then if we go ahead and click play, notice that we are now inside this crazy world. Whoops. You can see that I didn't put the car in exactly the right spot, so we kind of fell under the terrain. So to fix that, find our car model, and just move them up. We can actually move it up really high if we want to, and then click play. Because there's gravity, actually slowly fall. Oh, that's right. So here's a tip. If your model isn't hitting the ground, to here, where it says layer, default, drop this down, choose ignore raycast. If you get this pop up, you say yes, change children. Then go ahead and click play. And now the car properly responds to gravity. Drive it off this cliff here if we want to. Oh, landed on the other side. Very good. Once you've got the basics here, you can change your terrain by painting it different colors, textures. So to paint texture, and then you'll want to click Edit Terrain Layers, Edit Layer. Now in here, I don't have a whole lot in the way of textures because I haven't downloaded any. We do have a tire track texture, and I bet we can make our whole like tire tracks if we want to. Once you create your first terrain layer, the whole thing gets painted with that texture. You can go back and create more layers, choose them in here, paint different things. But let's just take a quick look at what that looks like. And now we have a covered tire tracks. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how you can get started with creating intro scenes in Unity. There is a ton of information out there online about how to make actual games. I encourage anyone to go ahead and give it a try. If you have any questions, you can get a hold of the VZFit forums. Again, my username there is Stain2319, and I'm happy to help if I can. Thanks for watching.